You're listening to the Crew Book Club podcast, the show that challenges you to change your mindset through hearing about dope books. Thanks for hanging with the crew to get advice, ask questions, and gain knowledge with me, your host, Sade Hill. What up, crew? What's good? It's your girl, Sade, always ready for another episode of the Crew Book Club podcast. Let's get into it, okay? I am always super ecstatic to record with you guys. It's just one of those things that just flow, and I find absolutely complete joy doing this, okay? So I hope you love it just as much as I do, and if you loving it, please show your girl some crew love by leaving a review right now if you've been listening to the pod. If this is your first time, let me be the first to welcome you to the crew, and after this episode, leave a 5-star, because I promise you it's gonna be good, because this is gonna be impactful. We are getting to our book chapter 4 of The Mountain Is You, and I'm sticking to just chapter 4 because there's so much good in it. I just don't want to measle through it quickly. And also, you know, who gonna check me boo God is a little lengthy. So, and I want to talk about it because this is just one of them checks where it's like you're gonna have to listen to the entire service that I got checked from. Okay, so let's already get into it. Okay, who gonna check me boo God is. He is always checking us because we welcome a good check, and it keeps us in check. So this particular check comes from my pastor here in Jacksonville of Celebration Church, Tim Timberlake. And it was last week's sermon, Honestly Speaking. And that's the title of the sermon. And I'll drop the link in the show notes for you to watch the entire thing. He dropped so many gems, as always. It's just, this particular message was just like, okay, let's be honest. And if you've been listening, you know one of my sayings is, you have to be honest with yourself before you're honest with anybody else. Okay? And so this scripture that I'm going to focus on, there's a few, so hope you have your pen and paper or your ears locked in. The first one comes from Romans 7:19, and it was talking about be honest about your frustrations. That was one of his points. And Romans 7:19 says, "For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do what I want to do, this I keep on doing. But the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing." Now, it was a little tongue twister, but I hope you understood. It's basically saying, I know better, but I'm not doing better. And we also want to be working in the space of knowing better and doing better, but that's not easy. And in this message, it's like, just be honest with the frustrations, and the thing is to give it to God, because He is the only one who can help us with our frustration. And I liked how he put how we can have the desire to be better all day. But the thing is, desire without action is a pipe dream. It's like, it's okay to acknowledge that you're frustrated, but let's give that frustration to God. And let's not just desire to be unfrustrated. Let's put the action into play so we won't just be a pipe dream. A lot of times I feel like we're frustrated because we're doing everything else than what we should be doing. And that, like, when you're, as a parent, if I'm reacting to my kid or to the people around me, I feel like, or even if you're not a parent, I feel like we react based on the fact that we're frustrated because we haven't done the things that we desire to do. So let's focus on being honest about our frustrations and having a plan for the things that we desire, put action to it. Okay, y'all already know I'm about that action. That's mainly what we talk about, is being about the action. There's no point of getting all this knowledge and not applying it, right? So then he talks about what I've told you guys, a thing that I fight with daily and have to be prepared for daily is fear. And the point that he made in the message was, be candid about your fears. And not just be candid about your fears to yourself and to the people around you, but most importantly, be candid about your fears to God so Jesus can help you. And I know y'all probably like, well, Jesus knows everything, so why do I need to be candid with him? I don't think it's a challenge of him knowing. I think it's us acknowledging our challenges to him a lot of times, or our fears to him. A lot of times we go to everybody else talking about our fears, hoping they're going to help us soothe those fears, when in actuality we need to be going to Jesus in that way. And then going to him would allow him to give the people in your life that's actually going to help with your fears, because everybody we should not be talking to. And I strongly believe you need that relationship with Christ to give you the discernment on who those people should be that you share your fears with. So it ain't about being candid with everybody. It's about being candid with the right people. And there may come a time where you have to be candid with everybody about your fears in the moment where you feel like you can handle it. Like me sharing it on this podcast, after I process it, or if I'm going through it and God gave me the discernment to share with you guys, I'm going to share it. You know what I'm saying? But if I don't have that discernment, I ain't sharing it. And I had to get to that space, because there's times where I have shared things prematurely with people because I haven't actually dealt with it or tackled it my darn self. You know what I'm saying? And one of the scriptures he mentioned was 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 20. And it reads, "For I am afraid that when I come, I may not find you as I want you to be, and you may not find me as you want me to be. I fear that there may be discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, slander, gossip, arrogance, and disorder." And when I'm reading this, I'm like, it just gave me comfort and a check of like, God knows these things. So he's not surprised if we do those things. Okay? It's just acknowledging that we are not going to be presented the way we think we should be presented amongst Christ, our God. But he's not that. He's not this big God in the sky that is not touchable and reachable. He's waiting for you to come to him, being candid about your fears, so he can help guide you through the emotion. God gave us emotions, but at the same time, we should not allow our emotions to overtake and control us. That is where we need to lean into to God for. So yeah, don't be afraid. It was like, okay, Sade, don't be afraid to go to him, even if it's about the same thing. Because I can have a control over the fear of getting on this mic and speaking to y'all. And then one day I might be like, oh, I don't know, God. Should I really be doing this on this mic? Then that's the time for me to really go to him and sit and get reconfirmed and to reconversate with him about what the destination is and what the goal is. Okay? So that's all. So continue to be honest about your frustrations. Be candid with your fears to God so he can help you. Okay? So that was the Who Gon Check Me Boo? God is. Please click the link in the show note to watch the entire sermon. It is so much that literally I just recommend a moment where you can sit and really take notes and lock in this message, because it's like, honestly speaking, with everything going on in our society, in our world, it's good to be able to be honest with the God that we serve to help guide and lead us and be better to help other people. There was another part in the sermon where he talked about sharing with people when you overcome something, to show them that you overcame it and that God helped you overcome it. That's how we be great disciples, sharing our testimonies with people, not beating a Bible into them. You know what I'm saying? But seeing them and hearing you survive something that they could potentially be going through, oh, that will save lives. You could save lives, but you're holding it in, worrying about what you may look like instead of focusing on the people that you could be saving. All right? So moving on. That whole sermon I could talk about on the pod for the full 30 minutes, but that is not why you are here. You're here about, that's not the only reason why you're here. You're here about this amazing book, The Mountain Is You. And also, if you cannot read the book page by page, we do have the partnership with Audible where you can listen. You can get a 30-day premium experience with them. Just click the link in the show notes. the Crew Love. It's audible.com/crewlove. And you can listen to podcasts. Our podcast is on there. The wellness program, theatrical performances, comedy, Audible originals. You can hear my podcast. It's just me. I do the outline, I do the editing, I do the audio, the music you hear from the intro, the outro, the script, everything. It's all me. So you can listen to my podcast, but it's definitely our podcast as the crew because it's for us. But anywho, yes, thank you, Audible, for that partnership. And no further ado, let's get into the book. All right. Chapter 4, Building Emotional Intelligence. And the reason that I wanted to spend time on this is because I feel like emotionally, we allow our emotions to lead too often. Okay. We need to check our emotions at the door. And that is where building emotional intelligence will help. So let's get into it. On page 103, that's where we're going to start off at, okay? All right. Building emotional intelligence. Self-sabotage is ultimately just a product of low emotional intelligence, okay? What is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, interpret, respond to your emotions in an enlightened and healthy way. Do you understand me? Healthy. That emotional rage and come on now. We're going to do things in a healthy way. It says here on page 104, people with high emotional intelligence are often able to better get along with different types of people, feel more contentment and satisfaction in their everyday lives, and consistently take time to process and express their authentic feelings. I'm so happy. This is perfect timing of doing this book because, mind you, I've probably read 3 other books before I actually talked about this one on the pod. I read these 3 books ago. So to go back and see these things, I'm like, oh my God, God is so strategic on the books that I pick here because these are things that I have to recheck myself and my emotional intelligence. And so as we continue on page 104, it says the root of self-sabotage is a lack of emotional intelligence because without the ability to understand ourselves, we inevitably become lost. And i.e., side note, that's when we really start to affect everyone in our lives, okay? Not just the people that are close to us that we love, but the people we interact with daily. You know, there are some, on page 104, we continue, there are some of the most misunderstood aspects of our brains and bodies that inevitably leave us stuck. And she goes on to say, your brain is designed to resist what you really want. She says, when we imagine what goals are we want to achieve, we often do so with the expectation that they will elevate your quality of life in some tangible way. And once we have arrived at that place, we'll be able to coast. Like coasting as in let go, relax in life, let things be for a while. Psych! That is not what happens, y'all. And I am testimony to that. Okay? Especially when it comes to real estate, you get in this space where it's like, oh, you know the business, you've got over the hurdle of getting your license, and then the business comes, and you're like, oh, 1 or 2 deals is cute, and then you're like, I need 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, da-da-da-da, or I want this higher price point. But all of that comes with new levels, and it's never just a coast. There's new levels, and then there's new challenges every time you get to a level, okay? And then let's talk about dopamines, because we have this thing that dopamines is just to give off pleasure. But in the book, she talks about this guy, this expert, Daniel Z. Lieberman, that they discovered. Dopamine is also a chemical that gives you the pleasure of wanting more. So it's not actually the physical act of the dopamine giving pleasure. It's the pleasure of wanting it more because it feels good, right? So the big, huge goal that you're working toward, you'll get there, and then there will be another mountain to scale, okay? Now, a lot of y'all, do you guys ever, have you ever gone hiking or did like a trail or something where you see the mountain and you're like, oh, cool, this is the peak. And then you actually get to there and there's like a whole nother valley and another upbeat. It's kind of like that in the process of life. Every time you think you've got something figured out, there's going to be something else. Same here. It was the hurdle of starting the podcast, and then the hurdle of learning the things, and now it's the hurdle of taking it to the next level, right? So now on page 105, it continues, this is one of the many reasons that we deeply sabotage what we truly want. We know instinctively that arriving won't really give us the ability to abstain from life. It will only make us hunger for more. And sometimes we don't feel up to the challenge because we've exhausted our mind and haven't properly prepared our bodies for what we're overtaking and the successes that comes with it. But it's not going to get easier. My husband and I was having this conversation the other day because I just felt like I felt broken. I felt like, why am I doing this again? Why am I doing this to myself? Why do I choose to do 75 hard every year? Recently, I was doing 75 hard twice in 1 year, literally like a month apart to support some people in my office. And I was just like, I'm doing this for the wrong reasons. I'm not doing it for me. And then I end up sabotaging myself and the plans that I had. And it was just like, let me quit. And I quit because I realized it wasn't beneficial at that point for me. Even though it was good, and I just finished it in February, to jump into it again for the wrong intent was not what that program is about. And I did not feel up to the challenge. So I quit something that I probably should have never started. Okay, but anywho, back to the book. She says, so while we're on a way of toxic cocktail of neurological bias, start piling up on one another, we start resent, judge, and even vilify the object of our greatest desires. Because then we start to say it's bad because we don't have the energy to complete it. So we end up self-sabotaging great opportunities because we didn't prepare ourselves. So she goes on to page 106. It says, what happens when you start to chase what we really want? We resent doing the work that it takes to actually get it because we are so afraid of not having it. Any brush with failures make us recede our effort and tense up. When we go so long not having what we really want, we create subconscious associations between having it and being quote unquote bad because we have judged others for having it. When we get it, we fear losing it so badly that we push away from ourselves so as to not have or withstand pain. Wow. It makes me think of being in a situation that may be challenging but still good, and instead of facing the challenge and pushing through, you quit. And then you're back at zero and you're figuring out, how did I get here? And it's like trying to get that momentum up again, and then the walls go up, and then you're sabotaging yourself by protecting yourself too much that you're not even open to the good things. Y'all don't realize, but when you put up a wall to block the bad things, you're also putting up a wall blocking the good, okay? I would rather risk it all, experiencing a few shots and dodges of bad to get the good, okay? She says here on page 106, you have to fail first to succeed. So true, okay? So then we go into page 110 where she talks about you don't change in breakthroughs, you change in micro shifts, okay? If you're stuck in life, it's probably because you're waiting for a big bang, the breakthrough moment in which your fears dissolve and you overcome with clarity. The moment never comes, y'all. You might have an aha moment on what the next step is, but there's never like this big thing that just happens and everything is just great and coasting and perfect. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Revelations occur when ideas that are sitting in the margins of your mind finally get enough attention to dominate your thoughts. These are the clicking moments. You know how stuff just click? The moments when you finally understand advice you've heard your entire life. It's not that big bang moment that just, the windows of heaven open up and it just came down. No, rather it's coming from things you've heard throughout your life or the things God has presented to you so often that you just ignored them or didn't take them serious because they were so small. And then it just hits in this one moment like, oh my God, God has been telling me this all along. All the clues we have are right in front of our faces. You just have to choose to accept them. Do you hear me, sis? And I'm talking to myself, okay? Listen, there's this guy named Thomas Kahn And he suggested you don't change our lives in a flash of brilliance, but through a slow process in which assumptions unravel and require new explanations. Think of micro shifts as tiny increments of change in your day-to-day life. A micro shift is changing what you eat for a part of one meal just one time, then it's doing that a second time and a third. Before you realize what happening, you've adapted a pattern of behavior. That's similar to like the compound effect or what we read about in Atomic Habits. Okay, those little steps and little things that you take will build up into bigger and better habits and ideas, the dreams. They're all built up into these little micro shifts that catapult you to the one level. And then when you get to that level, it's time to go to the next level. You hear what I'm saying? On page 112, she says, what you do every day accounts for the quality of life and the degree of your success. It's not whether you feel like putting in the work, but whether or not you do it regardless. This is because the outcomes of life are not governed by passion. They are governed by principle. It makes me think, when I met my husband a while ago, I was like, you got to have a passion. You got to have a passion. You got to have a passion for it. Da-da-da-da-da. Boy, that passion can wear real thin. And that's when you have to understand principle has to kick in. You got to do it even when you don't feel like doing it. Okay? Listen to this. Trying to shock yourself into a new life isn't going to work. And that's why it hasn't yet. Sis, shocking yourself into getting fit. It's little things. That's why extreme dieting I do not suggest. It's a lifestyle change. Now 75 hard is extreme, but that is based on what worked for me. To do it every year, it keeps me focused, it keeps me steady, to give me that burst of, it's like a burst of momentum for me. And that may not work for everybody. So you're going to have to start off doing something. And let me tell you this, I didn't just go from not working out at all to doing 75 hard. Let's get that straight. I've always been in some type of fitness, some type of sport, and doing something. It's just in that pivotal moment, I needed to shock myself out of some reality. Okay, so let's look into the next. Oh God, there was so much. On page 116, she says, new change creates adjustment shock. Okay. Anything that is new, even if it's good, will feel uncomfortable until it's also familiar, okay? The simple fact that any accomplishments, achievements, or life changes, no matter how positive the change is going to stress us. New baby, wedding, getting your degree, starting a business, it could be all good things, but it's still going to come with stress to you because it's an adjustment shock. It's like, woo, this is so good, but it's a lot. Okay? So just be prepared for that. And these are some signs of adjustment shock. Adjustment shock often comes across as a hypervigilance. If you make financial gains, your mind immediately shifts to what could potentially derail your progress. Adjustment shock can bring to light unconscious attachments and beliefs. If you're someone who was raised to think wealthy people are morally corrupt, you're going to resist having money. Okay? Adjustment shock can bring feelings of intense fear. This is because when we attain something we very much care about or have worked toward for a long time, our instinct can be to shield ourselves from the potential loss of it by putting up walls and desensitizing ourselves to the experience. Oh my gosh, that sounds like America. America. So, no, society period needs an adjustment shock. Maybe we're going through an adjustment shock. Okay? Maybe we stuck in that. But let's focus on our world, okay? Let's focus on realizing that we could be experiencing adjustment shock, but we need to know how to push through. Because she says on page 119, it is scary to receive everything we want because it forces us to shift our survivalist, fear-based mindset into a more stabilized one. We often think of big achievements as get out of life easier card. They rarely are that. In fact, the opposite tends to happen. They level us up, forces us into greater responsibilities, to think more deeply about big issues, to question ourselves and what we previously know to be true. Big achievements actually pressure us to become increasingly better versions of ourselves. Like, if I'm stressing right now about new opportunities that are coming, but I want to be a business owner, okay? It's not going the stress not going to go away. There's going to be more challenge and bigger challenge. And my husband's like, there's going to be responsibility for people that you're going to be responsible for. Then you're going to have the weight of being responsible for them because they're responsible for their family. And this has to run right and so on because this is your company. The lawsuits are going to come. These things are going to happen. So if you think you're stressing about this, what makes you think it's going to change when you have that big achievement? And y'all remember the conversation with Ebony K. Williams about requiring people to go higher and to be in ownership? Maybe a way of sabotaging ourselves is to think that no, ownership is not meant for everybody and it's okay to settle for this, that, and the other. It's an adjustment shock to be challenged to be an owner. So instead of owning something, we just settle for what is. Let's think about it that way. Okay? Now, how do we overcome adjustment shock? Let's talk about that. If you have anxiety about having more money, you will need to learn how to manage it better. If you have anxiety about relationships, you'll need to learn to relate to others like you've never had before. Basically, y'all, have a plan. I always tell people when you're about to sell a house and you're going to make profit, have a plan for the money. Or as a realtor, when you know you have an influx of closings coming up in this money, have a plan for the money. If you know you're saving, have a plan for the money. If you know you're going to have a baby, have a plan, have things in place. I have a client now who just found out they're having a baby. Congratulations. And they were like, we don't know what to do. I said, the best advice I can tell you is before a baby come, establish daddy and mommy responsibilities. It will help because then baby's not here, you guys are frustrated, and you have a plan for who's responsible for what. And that is like the best advice I can say. So when it comes to an adjustment shock, you know the work you're putting in, plan as if it's going to be successful, and prepare for it, okay? Now, that was a lot coming out of chapter 4. I'm going to finish this last point because I want to talk about the psyche thinking isn't wisdom. And she's not talking about palm reading and things. It's about us. You know what? Let's save that. I want to save that for the challenge of the week. Let's go to page 132 and I'll let this be the final point for chapter 4. It says worrying is the weakest defense system, okay? Worrying excessively is not a malfunction. That's the first thing I want us to understand. It's a natural thing for you to have a moment of worrying, okay? She says here, you're not of lesser character because you can't just stop or enjoy life. Worrying is a subconscious defense mechanism. It's what we do when we care about something so much we are equally terrified that it could hurt us, so we prepare to fight for it, okay? Worrying is normal, but like we said, having a plan. Just telling someone, and this is, you know how people say, oh, stop worrying, don't worry about it. It's, no. Just telling someone to stop worrying on page 134 and to be present strengthens your impulse to be fearful because you are effectively asking them to place their guard down. You realize when you tell someone that's what you're telling them to do. Making yourself feel more vulnerable when you're already on edge is not the answer. That's like telling somebody in an argument who is passionate and having a moment, calm down. Like, no, I am not calm. You cannot tell me to calm down. Okay? Instead, you guys, on page 134, it says, you have to find a different way to feel safe. Here's some ways. Imagine getting to the other side of the issue, perhaps even treating it as an opportunity to create something you otherwise couldn't. Or work on developing your self-esteem and know that even if you were to fail, you wouldn't be judged, excelled, or hated in a way you fear. Learn to move into a new pattern of thinking in which you can recognize that you don't need to balance out the bad with the good. Okay? It's like, oh, you ever had, like, weigh the good and the bad. Like, don't just think about, because that can put you in a state of worry. Really go to God and be like, okay, God, before I make this step, what should I do? Allow him the opportunity to answer. I was watching this ad about Steve Harvey, and he was saying how he pray and meditate is two separate things. Praying is talking to God. Meditating is waiting to hear from him. And a lot of times we don't give God the opportunity to respond to the things that we're asking of him to do. So give God a moment to answer what you should be doing about the things that you're worrying about. Okay? She says here on page 135, stability and wholeness, health and vitality are your birthright. You are allowed to have everything you want, and you're permitted to be at peace. Okay? You see why I had to give and dedicate this whole episode to chapter 4, because there's so much good. And those were just that whole chapter, y'all. I'm telling you guys need to read it. She has some really killer points in there that's going to help build your emotional intelligence. So click the link to order the book as well. Now, if you need even more help to build your emotional intelligence, I highly suggest therapy. That's why we have this great partnership sponsor of this episode, betterhelp.com/crewlove, to get your 10% of your first month of therapy. They take HSA. They have financial aid. I've heard people getting as low as $60 a month. You just have to communicate it. It was one point where I couldn't afford it, and they offered to me for $120, and I got one session a week. So let me tell y'all, the availability for therapy is out there. You just have to try. Give it one shot. And like I said, it's very easy to switch and change counselor therapist if need be. So give it a shot and try that out. It's convenient. You can be on your phone. I told y'all I hid in my car to have therapy. My husband and I did it virtually when he worked out of town. You know, it's just convenient, it's easy, and it's affordable. Okay? So click the link to betterhelp.com/crewlove. Now, the one that I paused on in chapter 4, I wanted to use to do the challenge of the week, and it's on page 120. And it's the psyche isn't wisdom. And I put the challenge of being, don't assume. Because you know that saying, you assume you make an ass of yourself. Okay, basically it's saying psyche thinking is assuming you know what somebody else is thinking or what they intend to do. This week, I want you to stop assuming, okay? On page 120, she says, it is assuming that the least likely outcome is the most valuable outcome because you feel it most strongly. You feel. Y'all, we have no idea what people are thinking or doing. Communicate first on that. But stop assuming the worst and stop assuming people's intentions you do not know. Just because you think that's what you would do, that's not exactly what they would do. You don't know what other people, what they have going on in their life. Okay? She says here, it is believing that you have missed out on another life, a path you did not choose, that you are possibly more meant for. That is another psyche thinking. Stop assuming that what you're in is not meant for you, and that if you were to leave or to go here and do this, if you haven't addressed yourself, moving to another state, getting into another relationship, if you're not satisfied with yourself, you're not going to be satisfied in any of those other areas. If you move, you have to figure you out first. Another thing, it is believing that the person with whom you have the most electric connection is your most ideal life partner. She says their thoughts, feelings, and intentions are largely, if not entirely, unknown to us. Okay? So stop assuming the worst or assuming that if you go in another direction, it's going to be the best. Okay? There is no such thing as a path we could have taken. She says on page 121, only a projection of our needs and the desires onto another fantasy idea of what our lives might be. Like, I had people make huge decisions off of a what if without properly doing the work, okay? And I'm going to tell you a testament to me. There's plenty of things that I almost walked away from or got into when I realized, okay, wait, did I really check with my Heavenly Father on whether I should be doing this or not? Or am I walking away too soon? Did I give God and everything the opportunity to make something work before I just left it? She says here, psyche thinking detaches us from reality. In place of logic, we put emotions, ones that are often incorrect, unreliable, and wholly biased toward what we believe. Psychic thinking breeds anxiety and depression. Okay? And you're wondering why you're in something, whether it's a work or a job or whatever it is, you think you shouldn't be here, is because you're living in this fantasy world of what could be. But we are faith-based. We believe in Jesus, and it's just like, if Jesus told you to be there, we need to find out what you're not doing or avoiding or sabotaging where it's not bringing you joy. So it's like, let's reevaluate. Are we really listening to God? Okay? So on page 124, it says, I'll leave this with this. The truth is that the past and the future are illusions in the present, and all we have is the present. So this week, don't assume, okay? Live in the present, and instead of trying to use your intelligence to hack what's next, try to get better at where you are currently. That's what's really going to change the outcomes of your life. And that was the end of that section of psyche thinking is not wisdom. Okay, now that was the challenge of the week. Let's get into what would the crew do. Remember, you can email thecrewbookclub@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram at the Crew Book Club and just say ask the crew, and I will answer your question here on the Crew Book Club podcast. And this one was emailed. Hey, it said, my spouse and I decided to move his parents in our home to help me with the kids since I decided to go back to work. It's been 3 months and they cause more harm. They cause more harm than help. We pay them to take care of the kids while we work, but the house is a mess and I still have plenty on my plate when I get home. I still have to cook and clean. Then I feel stuck in our room because I don't want to have to interact with his parents, because I feel if I do, I would explode on them. What should I do? Oh, child. Congratulations on your new job and getting back into the workforce. And I'm just assuming because they moved in for your kids. These are babies, like kids, like little kids. So this is, and I'm gonna keep it real now. Is the house, are they the reason for the mess, or is it the kids the reason for the mess? It is, and I guess it's keeping the space clean too. Like, what is the mess? Are they cleaning up behind the kids? Because I'm gonna say this, there's a level of responsibility. I don't know how old his parents are, but if they're there to do that, they're there to take care of the kids. As far as like the cleaning up and all of that, that will all depends. And then it makes me think, well, if you hired someone, would they be as messy? I don't know. I'm gonna say this is a conversation. I feel like if the people who love you, if you can't talk to them about boundaries and conversate with them, and they're making you feel stuck in your room, that's definitely a conversation to have with your husband first, since it's his parents. Then you guys come up with a game plan so you guys are on the same page. And why he not saying nothing? He's just comfortable sitting around with the house being the way it is. I feel like as women, a lot of times we don't vocalize how we feel about something, and then it just builds up, and then it comes out as an explode, which I don't want you to do, especially on his parents, child. They're there to, I know y'all paying them, and that's a whole conversation, but I would definitely talk to your husband first about your concerns in a calming manner. I would write everything down, because I think sometimes when we start a conversation without everything being marked out, we'll find ourselves 2 days later in the bed like, dang, I should have said this, I should have said this, and the conversation has already happened and closed, and he think everything fine, and you over here. So before you have the conversation, get a piece of paper or take a week to really write down things that you've seen and point out that bothers you. Go to him in a peaceful manner of concern, communicate with him. You guys hash it out first before you talk to his parents. So that way you guys are on the same page. And then have some boundaries in place, and have some boundaries for him to show up too. For 4 adults to be in a household and you didn't state how many kids you had, there's no reason why the house should be a mess. And there should be plenty of communication and support in a household where there's 4 adults, okay? So just have healthy communication, set your boundaries, and I would really love follow up. Let me know how that goes, okay? Oh, I was telling somebody, I was like, boy, If I ever had another child, I would want to hire a nanny, not just have a parent move in, because parents sometimes to forget that even though you my parent, I'm a grown person and I pay my bills, and there's a friendship at this point. But when you hire a parent, it still be hard to like put your foot down too. So that could be difficult. Maybe that money that you guys are using for your parents, I don't know what the setup is. Maybe you use that money to actually hire somebody that you can actually tell what to do without the fear of being in your own household. Okay. Thanks for locking in and sending that in. I know I always love to give the best advice that I can. And that is showing crew love too, participating in the podcast. I really love and appreciate that. Okay, so get your questions in and have them answered here on the pod. Now, you already know we cannot leave the episode without a quote of the week. I had so much fun today. The quote of the week comes from our book, The Mountain Is You. On page 127, it says, mental strength is not just hoping that nothing ever goes wrong. It is believing that we have the capacity to handle it if it does. Just know, crew, you got it, and you can tackle and do anything with a plan. All right, y'all. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all right here next week on the Crew Book Club podcast. Hey! Want to be a part of the crew? Hit that follow button so you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I would appreciate you showing crew love by rating the show on iTunes and Spotify. Don't keep all this goodness to yourself. Share and tell a friend so your whole crew can be growing with you. Let me be the first to tell you, welcome to the crew.